Hey guys, BJ the Brave here. I'm back with an update on the meta snapshot for Warhammer 40k Warpforge. It's the 9th of July that I'm recording this. And yeah, we've got a lot of changes since we last did this on the 13th. So let's dive right in. Okay, so first of all, I think the first thing I want to say is that this meta is not a good one. Alright, it's a pretty terrible meta, to be honest. In the space of about 3 weeks, we've gone from the game being in one of its best places probably it's ever been. There were loads of viable decks, there was lots of variety across all of the factions, even multiple warlords that were viable, and the game was fairly balanced. And in the space of 3 weeks, as is the nature of card games, especially when you're doing new releases and balance patches, I feel like the game is in a bit of a mess, to be honest. It will bounce back, things will change, but right now it's not a very fun meta, and I'm not going to lie about it. So yeah, there we are. Let's look at the tiers in this week's snapshot, and then I'm going to show you a few decks from maybe one from each tier. Obviously, I'll show you the top tier decks. Yeah, and I'll just kind of give you my thoughts on why I don't think it's a very good meta right now. Okay, so this is kind of like tier 4. Obviously, the big thing here is Mesos and Morven entering tier 4. I've also got like the terror in here. I don't really understand the terror. I see the stats that come from Everguild, and I always seem to, whenever I play terror, it always seems much better than I'm led to believe. But looking at the stats that we get from EG, it's not great for terror. So, but the big ones are obviously Gordrang took a massive nerf, obviously losing the concussive ability, which just kind of, for me, like sort of guts the identity of Gordrang. I've seen some ideas that they should have kept concussive if he attacked with his melee attack, but not his range attack. I think that could have been a good idea. Or they could have even reduced the strength from 4 to 3. Don't get me wrong, still doing 4 damage for 2 energy. It's not bad. Definitely help you clear units and stuff, but I mean, Gordrang has massively lost his power with the losing of concussive. We've also got a Mesos, and a Mesos, I mean, again, just the Tau faction has been so gutted of all the interesting mechanics that there's basically, I think, like one playable deck, and that is such a shame, because the beauty of Tau when it was released, okay, it was a little bit overpowered, although not compared to one faction that's a bit overpowered right now, I don't think, but they were a little bit overpowered. But what was great about the design of the Tau is they were so few bad cards, and they were interesting, like different archetypes that you could play. They've just completely gutted the interesting mechanics. Nothing works. And basically on Mesos now, you have to pay to get the drone. They basically made the drones, the marker drones, the gun drones, cost 3 energy, because you've got to pay the 1 to get the drone, which goes into your hand, and then you have to actually play it onto the board. So yeah, Mesos has been badly gutted. Interesting that Zagstroke could be, slightly better if, for example, Junith was to take over the meta. Not that that's happening any time soon, but keep an eye on it. But yeah, overall, these decks are all tier 4. By the way, Morven's not that good. I really don't think Morven's that good. I think that even though she has 40 health, she actually ends up having less health than Erica, because she doesn't have heal, and she through the course of the game, when you're playing things like flagellants and stuff, you're going to actually end up doing damage to yourself. So actually, you don't even really end up with the kind of usual 5 health buff that you would get over the 35 health ones. And then also some of the cards that are suited to Morven, I actually think like the Pennant Engine and stuff like that, they're just not as good. And especially, again, looking at the current meta units, they're just too powerful for what she can produce. So I'm not loving Morven, not really massive fan, and I'm putting her in tier 4. Maybe there's an argument that she's tier 3, but I don't see it at the minute. I think she's poor. Okie dokie. So let's have a look. Yeah, so basically in tier 3, we have seen some buffs to the sisters, and for me, I think that as I said in my video on the balance patch, I do think that getting a change to Raging Storm was a real positive. So that was brilliant. That card was really ruining what it felt like to play sisters. So that change was spot on. However, I'd say for the rest of the balance patch, they didn't do a right lot, and they really missed an opportunity to. They sort of missed out on the points that you know that sisters were struggling on. You know, they things like give Exorcist 1 extra damage when that's not the problem with that card. It's a dead card. Anyway, that said, yeah, I mean, look, sisters have definitely got a little bit better. They had the worst win rates in the official meta report from EG, and I'd expect them to do a little bit better, although not much, to be honest. I still love playing Erica. She's still one of my probably favourite 3 warlords to play at the minute. I really enjoy the challenge of the deck, and when it all comes together, it can be pretty powerful. But I wouldn't say like its consistency is quite there yet. And Junith is really interesting because Junith now brings this sort of go wide approach. I know a few members of the community are playing a lot of Junith and testing things, but she does bring a slightly different playstyle, so I think that's a real positive. But I don't think she's quite there yet. But definitely, if she gets her Relic of St. Catherine's on E4, and then she can start pumping out 2 sisters a turn. I talked quite a lot. If you go and check out my video on my 3 sisters ladders decks update. I talked quite a bit, because people have been asking me about Junith, and I'm not going to do a deck guide for Junith just yet, guys, because, well, there's no point, and I don't love the style, but I did go into quite a bit of analysis on that video about how to play Junith, so go and check that out. But I do think that they are probably, yeah, they're probably in the tier 3 now, so they've gone up a tier, but they're still not kind of world beating or anything. And again, on VAR, I think with the nerfs to Tau, I don't think you're going to see too much on VAR. The biggest thing here really is that I've got Uriel in tier 3, and honestly, Ultramarines are so goddamn good right now that the only reason Uriel's here is that no one's playing him because the other warlords are much better, and Uriel doesn't have access to draw. So, to be honest, Uriel probably is a really good tier 2 deck for Uriel, so arguably Uriel is actually in tier 2, but I've got him right at the top of tier 3. Nemesis actually did a little bit better, again, in both the non-legendary and legendary stats, kind of hovering around the 50%, so the buffs to the kind of tempo Nemesis players have definitely increased the win rate of Nemesis, so definitely not a warlord to be slept on, but not really at the top tier just yet. So yeah, here is a Junith build. This is one that I put together based on kind of like what I've heard around the community and what success people are having with Junith. And you're really just trying in the early game. I mean, more than any warlord, the Junith really relies on having your Relic of St. Catherine, right? It really does feel a bit binary. Like, if you get that off in the early game, you've got a good chance of winning. If you don't get that, you're probably going to lose. And I don't like that kind of level of binary. It's why I never really even liked the green war in Orkz, for example, because it was another card where if you got it, yeah, you won. If you didn't, no, probably didn't. But this deck is all about like trying to find options. Like, that's why we play the Sister Novitatis as well, because we really in the early game want to try and give our opponent so many things to deal with that we can actually get some prayer off and hopefully generate some faith. But I mean, once you do generate that faith, and if you do get Relic on E4 on turn 3, I mean, my god, like, the Junith ability is serious. It's 6 health and 4 attack that you're putting down every turn for 2 energy, and you need to make sure you're trading with that, by the way, in the first few turns. I talk more about that in my sisters update video guide, so go and check that out. But yeah, this is what it looks like. It's fun. It's a new way of playing. Also, the Paragon Warsuits can be act as an insane finisher, because you can have board states where you end up with like like a go wide board with 4 to 5 units that are praying. You drop the war suit, so that becomes Vanguard, and if your opponent hasn't got the hard removal, they can't get to your praying units, and then they end up doing 16 damage to face, and you in the game. So the Paragon Warsuit has a really high power ceiling in this kind of like go wide deck. So it's really interesting, and I like that you can use praying as a way to finish the game. I think that's really cool. And obviously Triumph of St. Catherine getting a real good buff now. This is a solid card. This is a really good card now, Triumph of St. Catherine, and probably, to be honest, outside of the offense card changing, that's probably the most significant change in the recent patch. Alright, so moving on, we have got our tier 2 decks. Now, Shadowsun represents probably, and I'm going to show you my updated Shadowsun deck, pretty good. Shadowsun is the one Tau deck, I think, that is still barely standing, but it is actually pretty competitive. It really struggles against Ghazghkull, and we'll talk about Ghazghkull in a little bit, and Ghazghkull is going to be pretty prominent at the minute, and so that's one of the reasons to not play Shadowsun, but Shadowsun outside of that is pretty good actually. Pretty nice tempo, kind of mid-range body deck. We'll come on to that in a bit. Tervigon, obviously, as you know, Putis got to the top of the ladder with Tervigon last season. Really powerful combo deck. Probably still the most powerful combo deck in the game, or at least one of. The only problem with Tervigon right now is that it doesn't do well against fast marine decks, and they're everywhere. And speaking of fast decks, we've got obviously Zephyr Galen. They remained having a really high win rate. Galen had a 58% win rate at the legendary ranks last season, and Zephyr wasn't far behind. So, really interesting. I think Zephyr might have suffered a little bit in terms of... Has it suffered from the change to stealth? Not really, actually. The things that they put down don't really attack after stealth. So, yeah, I think both these decks are pretty good. I think Abaddon is obviously one that's fallen. I had Abaddon in tier 1 last season, and I think Abaddon's basically always been quite neck and neck with the powerful marine decks, if not slightly ahead if we looked at like the last 5 to 6 months. But right now, they are losing out badly to the Ultramarines. I've got some ideas with Abaddon. I need to do a little bit of play testing. I think that you're probably going to need to do a bit of reconfiguring for the current meta. Still got a very powerful card set though, so easily maintaining the tier 2 position, but not tier 1 anymore. And of course, Imatech was tier 1 last season, but has received some nerfs. They're already it was already a very slow control deck. It's now being slowed down even more with things like Immortal Pride costing more, and just the general raising of cost for a few units. So I think Imatech still does what Imatech does. Nothing's changed there. It's just a little bit slower, a bit more expensive. Now Ghazghkull is my old faithful Ghazghkull favorite deck in the game. Is my kind of fatigue control deck, and it's very good. Particularly right now, I think it's like one of the better prey decks. So because the Ultramarines are the meta, Ghazghkull does pretty well. It does pretty well. I have a very high win rate against the Marines. I have lost a few, particularly to Lotharius. So it's especially when you get like high level play between Ghazghkull and the Ultramarines, when both players really understand what the other deck's trying to do. It's quite an interesting match actually, but I do find that Gaz does have the tools if he draws them in the right order, and that's always the problem with the control deck. Sometimes you don't draw them in the right order and you just get blown out by the tempo deck. So, but Ghazghkull's pretty strong right now. Also very strong against Swarmlord, right, with the hard removals, ability to get around stealth, obviously. So Ghazghkull is a very powerful prey deck right now into the meta, but obviously is weaker against Imatech, although that matchup's got a little bit better for Ghazghkull just because, as I said before, Imatech has been nerfed a little bit, but I'd still say Imatech's probably slightly favoured in that kind of control matchup. So yeah, and then finally Swarmlord. I was umming and ahhing about Swarmlord, whether to put Swarmlord at tier 1. The main reason that I was going to put him at tier 1 is because Putis has got to the top of the ladder with Swarmlord, and it is very, very powerful. And if things line up and Swarmlord gets what it needs to get, and if Ultramarines don't go off on like one of the crazy wombo combos, Swarmlord can definitely beat Marines, 100%. So it is a powerful deck, it's a competitive deck, but I think it is probably a meta right now where it's just very clear that Ultramarines are just a cut above everything else. So I wanted to emphasize that in this week's snapshot. Alright, so let's just quickly take a look at a couple of those decks from Tier 2. So this is my new Shadowsun build, really making use of, I like the Pulse Onslaughts in there. You know, Shadowsun's still, biggest weakness, biggest thing holding them back is the offense card. EG still haven't touched that, and that's, you know, there's been a couple of games that I've lost with this deck this season where it's purely just I'm sitting there with all these answers and I just can't do anything because of the offense card. Like, if they just change that card, this deck could be a real contender. I would say if that card didn't exist, this card would be like near top of Tier 2, really, rather than bottom. But it, you know, I've gone with the Pulse Onslaughts. Really, again, offense card. Notwithstanding, I really think having the hard removal in here with the coordinated engagements is very, very good in this meta, right? Dealing with those beefy tanks, always having access to a Markalite because of Shadowsun's ability. What else we got? We do run. We are very conscious of the number of battle suits in the deck versus non-battle suits. So you'll notice the only real non-battle suit in here is the Onshi. So I've even cut the stealth drones, but what I have done is I've put a stealth battle suit in. You could put a second one in. You can fiddle with the numbers a little bit, like you could drop a cold start and put a second stealth chassis in if you want more access to drones. But the thing is with this, I really wanted to just completely purify and ensure that when we dynamic offensive, we are getting battle suits. That's the idea, or things that have flank like long strike, and I've got a single Vespid in there as well. So this deck's been pretty good actually still this season. Like I say, it loses a bit to Ghazghkull control, but other than that, this is still powerful. And quite frankly, I think it's really the only like viable Tau deck to climb with right now is something along these lines. Okay, next up we've got Swarmlord. Won't linger on this one too much, shown you these sort of decks before. Not much has changed since last season. Obviously, things like the Rapacious Hunger and the Gargoyles have really helped Tyrannids. And if things like drones are dead now, aren't they? But if things like Junith was to become more meta, then Rapacious Hunger, obviously we might think about a second one. I was even thinking about the 4-drop stratagem to deal with hard removal for the tanks, but we have got 2 Venom Throats in here, so yeah, so that's a Swarm Lord deck. Obviously you can fiddle with a few of the numbers, but that kind of is the basic idea. Draw the tempo, good bodies, obviously, and look for that big combo finish where you just beat the opponent down, often with Ravenous Hunter. Now this is the Ghazghkull control. I've done a separate video just on this, showing like gameplay in the top 20 on ladder, so go and check that out. But it's just like I say, really, really powerful. It's got all the answers. It's got hard removal. It's got fantastic flankers. You know, the Vet Stoneboy, best flanker in the game. Squig Buggy, probably second best flanker in the game, or at least up there. So we got access to really, really cool stuff. Obviously with Ghazghkull's body, the 40 health, we're not attacking, we're playing the long game. We're dropping things like Grizzled Scarboy so we get armored up. We've got the heal. I've even got Arda's Nails in my current version. You'll see on the video I actually had the Grot tank in there. It's a flex spot, so you can play with that. There is somebody in the top 10 right now who's running double, not Stomper. What's the 9-drop? Oh god, why can't I think of what the 9-drop is? It's one of my favourite vehicles in the deck. Anyway, the 9-drop with the Blast 5. There's a guy in the top 10 who has like this deck, but basically runs 2 of those, so you can make it, you can basically lean and tech it into even late game to go up against enemy control decks. Or you can, you know, you could like what I've done here. I've gone Arda's Nails. The reason I've gone Arda's Nails, it gives me even more heal, right? Even more survivability. Remember, that hits your Warlord. And because I'm running 2 Gretchen mobs and Rock Invasion, that gives me quite a lot of good targets for a really powerful Arda's Nails turn. Like Arda's Nails with Gretchen mob has always been a really, really good combination, and I really like Arda's Nails. So, yep. So there we go. That's the control deck. There is a few things you could drop, like the big chopper knob, for example. I'm still not convinced on big chopper knob, but right now I've got it in there. But if you're looking for flex spots and things to change, that is definitely one. Nice combination if you like the pyro and you've got that legendary card, you can combine that with Iron Gob. And that means that you can basically, just from Ghazghkull himself, you can stun 3 units, because the Iron Gob gives you concussive and the Pyro gives you blast 2, and so just from Ghazghkull alone you can essentially hold up 3 units for 1 turn, which is really, really powerful. Alright, so that is my Ghazghkull control. Then we've got tier 1, and so no surprise, we have got a not very fun meta at the minute, but it is filled with Ultramarines completely dominating, and like I say, even Uriel probably could make a good argument it's tier 2. But these 3, they all have access to card draw. The new Ultramarine cards that came out, for me, lacked a lot of inspiration. They basically just power creep cards without really bringing anything from a kind of theme perspective. They're not really adding any new styles of play. So, you know, we've got these outrageous... Take the Bite, for example, 3 energy, and it's essentially a 5 power flanker. How do you justify, for 3 energy, something that can deal 5... Come on and deal 5 damage on the same turn? Meanwhile, in Sisters, we've got 3 energy cards that have got like half the stats and just sit there doing nothing for a turn. I don't get it. The Ultramarines are completely dominant. The Predator tank is too powerful. They've now got even more mana cheats, energy cheats, so they can get these units that are more powerful out earlier. That's really what it comes down to, and without running out of resources, because they've all got access to card draw. You know, so let's just look at a few decks. Okay, so here is the big boy Lotharius deck. This is Shrigma deck, which Long Tim did a really good video on, by the way. If you've not checked out Long Tim's YouTube channel, go and check that out. He did a deck guide for this deck. Very, very powerful. I don't actually have Lotharius. I don't have the card yet, so if you were wondering why I've not made any deck guides on him or used him, because I haven't got him. But this is the deck that Shrigma has made, and as you can see, it's very much a vehicle based deck. We've got the synergy in there with the Primaris Tech Marine, the broken Outriders, the 2/3 drops that we just talked about a minute ago. Obviously, Battlefield Supremacy, if we get that off, we're making everything cheaper. The Storm Speeder Hail Strikes, I called this one. I said this is a good card. It's a very good card, and I think people are realizing it's very powerful, and even more powerful when you drop that, and the next turn you're often playing the Annihilator. So if your opponent can answer it, they're probably spending resources to answer it, and then the Predator Annihilator drops, and it's just overwhelming. So with the ability to heal, I really love Lotharius, by the way. I love that design. I like that we are now starting to make Warlords do a bit more, basically, so not just have a talent, but doing something. This guy gets to attack and heal adjacent units. Obviously, the Sisters, Warlords get to prey instead of attacking. So I do like that EG are kind of getting a bit more creative with what they can do with the Warlords. So I think Lotharius is cool. And here's a very, very powerful deck. This is a very, very powerful deck. So if you have got Lotharius, then this is something you could do. By the way, one of the things that another reason why the Ultramarines are so broken right now is you could replace Lotharius. You could take this exact deck. So don't worry if you don't have him, because you could take this exact deck and you could put Calgar in there, or you could put Tigurius in there, and it would still be a tier 1 deck, right? So they are very interchangeable. The cards themselves, this combination of cards is just a little bit busted right now, and so yeah, you will do very well with this build with any of the Warlords. Alright, next up we got Calgar. So this is like a Calgar more late game version. So we got like the double executioners, we got the Blade Guard veterans. You know, now I actually don't have this is my this is like a deck that I've sort of built, and I based it around I think it was Barrick who came up with a on the Discord. He came up with a Tigurius build, and I've kind of based it on that. Now again, I actually don't have all of the new cards yet, right? So where you see things like one Outrider, that's because I don't have to. If I had the second one, I would be running it. Where you see things like what's the other one? Rapid deployment. I only have one. Now that's the only card where I'm not sure if I'd put 2 in. Probably in this build because we run the high, a lot of like high value cards. I would run the second one if I had it, but I don't. What I would drop is probably something like Point Blank Shot and Sergeant Electus. But basically, I don't have those 2 cards, and that's why I have this. But you know, being able to cheat out Blade Guard Veteran and play that on E4 instead of 6, or obviously the Annihilator on E5. I mean, the Hail Strike on E4. There's so many good cards that target those kind of energy cheats, and this deck can just sit back. It doesn't even have to attack with Calgar, and it's just devastating in the late game. Just the amount of pressure you put on when you tactical insight with things like Annihilator and stuff, and then obviously you've got the Executioners and you've got the Inspired Retribution, so in the mirror matches you've just got all the removal to deal with their enemy big stuff. So this is I like this because it's quite a good counter to other Ultramarine decks as well right now. Okay, so the last one was Vara. Now, I called this 6S because it only has 6 stratagems. There's a lot of things you can do with Tigurius right now where you basically play on the amount of stratagems. Now I've run I built a 3S deck, a 4S deck, a 5S and a 6S. I found that 3S was just a little bit too much. Like I would often use the hero power just to codex and draw nothing because I didn't have any more stratagems. But obviously in 3S you are getting Avenging Seal every single game and early as well, right? You're getting Humanity Shield every single turn. In 6S, what I'm finding is I think 6S has been about right for me. I think 5 or 6S is about right. If you're playing 5S, you've got to be really mindful to chuck away your stratagems. But I find 6S is about the right balance, and that's why I even run the 6th stratagem was the Death from Above, because like you can draw that and you've got an extra reach for finish. So this is a bit more of a mixed sort of infantry and vehicle deck. And I find this to be a bit faster, basically. So if you just want like a slightly more like aggro-y version, this is pretty good. So to be honest with you, there's a whole, you know, some of these cards are interchangeable because the Ultramarines are just so broken right now that it's just very, very, very powerful. So that is my that is the meta. That's how I see it. Like I say, it's not a very fun meta. If you just want to climb ladder, just play Ultramarines. There's really no reason to play anything else. I personally love Ghazghkull to control, and I think it has a good matchup into Marines, but those games take a long time. You'll see on the video that I did that most of the games I just fatigue Marines, because Marines just draw cards, right? And Gaz fatigue just goes, okay, keep drawing cards, and I'll just kill you in fatigue. But in terms of climbing, you'll probably play 3 games with Ultramarines for every Ghazghkull game that you can play. So if you just want to climb right now, there's really no reason to play any other deck other than Ultramarines. And by the way, I just want to say to finish that I'm really the new ladder system cannot come fast enough. Like this is a season where I'm really struggling to play ladder because like this is exactly why having the kind of Gwent Pro League. If you go and watch the interview I did with Andreas, co-founder of EG, and he heavily alluded to the fact that we're going to have, at least in the legendary ranks, we're going to have a new ladder system which is going to benefit playing multiple factions. And this meta is an absolute prime example of why you need that system, because right now, why play anything other than Ultramarines? You're only rewarded for playing the best deck, and there's no real reason or incentive to play anything else. So there we go. So sorry, it's a bit of a not the most enthusiastic of meta snapshots, but you know, I'm just trying to reflect how I think the meta actually is rather than how I'd like it to be. Unfortunately, right now we're not in a great place, but it will improve. There will be, you know, eventually there'll be balance changes, there'll be new stuff coming, and hopefully we've got alliances around the corner, so that is something fun to look forward to. Alright guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Have I missed anything? Have I got some of these slightly out? Let me know in the comments. Always like engaging, like and subscribe and all that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys.